Joining us now, Congressman, Republican, 7th District of Virginia, that is the Central Virginia area, Dave Brat. Dr. Brat, good to have you with us.
Hey, good to be on, Dr. Fredericks.
Well, I tell you what, thanks for coming to the Advance this past weekend and coming to our suite. We appreciated it. Thanks.
Right.
It was good to see you there. We were talking about the tax plan now. Republicans saying that, well, they might have to compromise on the state and local tax issue. They may have to raise the corporate tax from 20%, what both houses passed, to maybe something else, 21 or 22%. Why can't Republicans just get something through here that makes sense? I don't understand. Now, all the shenanigans, what's the problem?
Yeah, well, the problem is our side doesn't do a good enough job of messaging on this kind of abuse of rational policy. And so at the end of the day, they're searching for votes, and then each, holdout, every vote that holds out has enormous leverage to get what they want. I mean, this is the old billion-dollar deals and bridges to nowhere. And so now they're extracting changes to national policy. And, that the American people, and especially on the Republican side, need to write in and say, knock it off, right? If you're my congressman or senator, cut this stuff off. The problem is a lot of the voters do want some of the stuff that, some of the liberal to more moderate members want. And so we're trying to cut rates. But if you negotiate and lose all of the deductions or whatever, then you have to keep raising rates to pay for it. That's the way the system works. So that's what's going on right now, right? They're trying to find money. They're limited by the $1.5 trillion number that CBO gives you, which is just, completely artificial. But we're haggling in there. And so I definitely do not want to see that rate go to 20. President Trump started at 15 and said he didn't want it above 15. But now in order to get votes at the last minute, they're going to do what they're going to do.
It's so frustrating. When I was at the Republican Party of Virginia Advance on Friday evening, Morgan Griffith said something to me, your colleague, Republican congressman from the 9th District, that's Southwest Virginia. He said something interesting. He said that he had gone to leadership and was urging leadership that whatever the final tax cut bill is, to make it retroactive for personal filers in 2017, because then people would actually be doing their taxes in 2018 and see the difference rather than just speculate it. That sounds like a great idea. Does it have any legs?
Yeah, it's a great idea. And by the way, Morgan Griffith is just a great colleague. He is super wit smart. He knows the rules, the procedures better than anyone up there. So we're lucky to have him in the delegation. And, yeah, at this point, it makes perfect sense, right? If you're going to do the cut and people aren't going to find out about it until a year later, and now the Senate's even talking about delaying it a year later, that's just terrible. I mean, the market is going up right now. Economic performance is going up. All the optimism metrics are going up. I read a piece yesterday, NFIB, the small businesses sometimes don't track with the whole economy, but small business optimism and hiring is up right now. That's in the face of Obamacare. To have small business hiring right now, that's tremendous good news. And so the last thing you want to do is be a downer and delay the tax cuts. We should make them retroactive so people see the good news immediately and get even more optimistic and go out and consume, and then that'll give the business side confidence to go out and invest in capital. And when you put capital in the hands of American workers, we're the most productive nation on earth, and it makes you rich. And we have not educated our people about the basics, where the Marxist formula was if you own capital, you're morally corrupt. And it's the exact opposite. When you put capital in the hands of people, they feed themselves. And China and India right now are doing that, and they're blowing us away. And so we better wake up and smell the coffee any day now.
It's interesting. I was at a White House Christmas reception on Friday, and the president came down to speak to us. And one of the things he said that I thought was amazing, he says, I'm on the phone with the Prime Minister of India, and they're complaining to me that, our economy, not where we'd like it to be. We only got 8% growth or 9% growth.
Right.
And the president is saying, we were operating on Obama's 1% growth forever, and that was supposed to be okay. And he's like, I'm talking to people in India who are mad if they're getting 8 or 8.5% growth. They think it ought to be 10. It's crazy.
Yeah, no, the Chinese and the Indians are 2.5 billion people on the planet, right, out of about 8 billion. I taught economics forever. And that's the biggest human welfare gain in all of human history. And it's amazing to me conservatives don't brag about our accomplishment. We have a bigger improvement to social welfare than any liberal has ever pulled off by a magnitude of 1,000 times. And what did that? The Chinese and the Indian economies moved toward a free market society. They moved toward freedom. They moved toward markets. And now they're rich. When I started teaching, they made about $1,000 a year a person. Now they're making $10,000 a year in a short period of time. And it's just a phenomenal increase. All children of God. The press never quotes us on that. And now for the first time, they have nutrition, some electricity, some housing, some health care. I mean, it's tremendous advance brought to you by free markets. And our side doesn't brag on that.
Well, I tell you what, Congressman, what Obama never understood is that there is a close and important correlation between optimism and economic growth.
Right.
Optimistic consumers spend money. Optimistic investors buy stock. I mean, optimistic small business owners hire people, right? I mean, he just doesn't understand this. When you have an optimistic outlook, the economy grows. When you have a pessimistic outlook, it contracts. Obama never understood this, Congressman. Trump does.
Yeah, and, it is curious because they usually say, elections won by the person you'd rather go out and have a coffee or a beer with. And Obama gave the impression he was positive, right? He'd smile or whatever. But if you look at the policies he put into place and the effect and the tension that was in existence when he left office, the tensions in this country are higher than ever, right? And President Trump gets blamed for all this stuff. And, I mean, he could tweet a little bit less or, do a few more Merry Christmas, upbeat stuff right now, too. We all need to get more positive. But there's no comparison, right? President Trump's got everybody on the optimism train right now, and especially in the business community, and it's just a great thing.
Well, that's because people think that with him in there, that his policies are going to lead to economic expansion, economic growth, lower taxes, better economy. And so people are then making the investment. One of the arguments made is that apparently there was some CEO meeting someplace, and either Secretary of Treasury, I think it was either Stephen Hoshin or Hastert, chief of the president's economic advisors, said, hey, if you cut corporate taxes, who is going to take that money and invest capital in the economy? And apparently only several hands went up. And the Democrats have been pounding this over and over, saying, look, there's evidence of fact that these corporations are going to take the money, give it to shareholders, and not do anything. Well, the reality is, if they did that, they would get competition within their industry, manufacturing, or service sectors, because other companies would say, I can do better on paying 20% taxes than that company can do paying what would essentially be still 35% taxes if they don't expand their businesses. Am I right?
No, right on. That's a great point, and that's what we need is more people just making the rational case like that. I mean, it's just crazy. So you're going to give money back to business, and what do you think happens? I mean, the left is just making stuff up because they don't have anything. So they say we're raising taxes when we're lowering taxes. So, I mean, it's Orwell, right? You got to make up your mind. One party is telling the truth and the other is not, and that matters. And you already see the performance, right? The market's going up, and if two senators sneeze on a given day over the tax cut, the stock market plummets.
Right.
So you got real objective evidence about which plan works. And the Democrats in their progressive budget with 107 votes, right, over half the Democrats voted to increase your taxes by $10 trillion, increase your spending by $11 trillion, resulting in more debt and deficits than we have in our package after we cut taxes. And you will never hear a word of that from the press. And so we've got to do a way better job of just saying, hey, compare us to our competition, and there is no competition.
Well,
we're
the Democrats
make your life better off, and they're gonna slow the economy to zero.
The Democrats are lying through their teeth, and they know it's a lie, but they have to keep saying, is this a tax cut for the rich? Middle class isn't going to benefit. It's only for the big corporations. This is a payoff for Trump's donors. Whatever it is they're saying, it's completely false. We spent 2 weeks on the show debunking it. Person after person would call in with their situation, and we had all the charts in front of us. And to almost everybody that called into my show, 100 people over 2 weeks, everybody that called in, their taxes were going to go down. But they called in because they believed they were going to go up based on what they have heard from the media and from the Democrats, who are being completely disingenuous. We're with Republican 7th District Congressman from Virginia, Dr. Dave Brat. Let's get to moving the United States consulate from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, the president making that decision middle of last week. What did you make of that, Dave?
Yeah, and I just want to follow up on your great comment you just made about the taxes, and then I'll get on to that. But I met a guy at Arby's on the way back in Louisa. He was murmuring against Republicans when I walked in. He said, He says, I voted for you, but I don't like what you're doing. You're going to raise my taxes. My taxes are going to go from 10% to 12%. And I ended up posting some of this, but I sat down with him after we're done eating. I said, hey, I heard you listen to the radio station on taxes. And he said, yeah. He said, you're raising my tax rate from 10 to 12%. And I said, that is true. I said, but the first $12,000, and if you're married, the first $24,000, you get 0%. And so we haven't even got the basics through. No matter who you are, right? If you're married, the first $24,000 you make are taxed at 0, and then up to $260,000, you get a very, very low rate, and after that, it's 25. And so we got to do better. And so on the Jerusalem thing, I think it's a home run. I mean, that's every president, I think since Eisenhower, has promised this, to do this, right? Clinton did, President Obama did. Israel is our best friend, the Judeo-Christian tradition. You know, I go off on that all the time. I went to Princeton Seminary. That's where James Madison went. He studied Hebrew when he was done, just for kicks. And when we look out in Congress, when Paul Ryan looks out, you got all the lawgivers around the Congress, right? The big marble bus. And there's only one of them that looks straight ahead, and that's Moses, the lawgiver, right? The utter foundation for Western civ is the Judeo-Christian tradition combined with the Greek view of human reason. When you put those two things together, boom, you get explosive success and progress like the world has never seen. And so we should be all just totally excited. We're partnering with our best ally, Israel, in the region, who is a democracy, who welcomes people from other lands in as citizens. No other country in the region does that. They're capitalists. They're free market. They're rich. They're a tremendously successful nation in everything they do. And we've got to just applaud that. And so I applaud President Trump for doing that and keeping his word on it.
Well, look, as you said, every president, starting with George Bush 1, has promised to do this. We passed a law in Congress in 95 to do it, but nobody ever expected that any president would follow through on it, so they kept signing the waivers. And now this president actually followed through on what he did. And, you know, Congressman, what is so amazing about this town, Washington is what I'm referring to, is nobody in there actually believes that any politician is even expected to follow through on their campaign rhetoric or promises. So when they do, it's like shock and dismay. Like, what do you mean you're following through on that? Everybody says that in a campaign, right? We never expected you would actually do any of this. I mean, isn't that incredible?
No, it is incredible. And that's what this whole realignment is about. Right now, it's not pleasant. But the American people have caught on both sides. The Democrats all vote with Pelosi and Schumer. They never break away. Right? And then on the Republican side, you got a little dynamism now, the Freedom Caucus, et cetera. We vote for our constituents first, and then on principle, which hopefully is aligned with that, right? And we'll buck the system. We'll vote against our administration or the leadership in the House and Senate on the health care bill. We did that when the price was going up. We voted against our own leadership and the administration, et cetera, until we got the price to come down, and we made a better bill. And so, yeah, people are in shock. And then it's funny, the media at the end of the year will rip on the Freedom Caucus because we're always making a fight on the spending. And now the Democrats and the mainstream media are concerned about deficits for the first time in world history. So it's fairly shocking. And then I remind them, I said, you do recall who the only group is that has been in on the spending fight for the last 3 or 4 years since I've been there. And it's been the House Freedom Caucus. We're the only one that has that fight on those issues, and people are shocked. And we get thrown under the bus for fighting the good fight. I mean, so you do pay the price when you try to keep your word and stick up for principles.
Well, it's an amazing town, Washington, D.C., when you get up there and you just figure out, Trump calls it the swamp. It's worse than that. To be up there every day, basically the lobbyists run the town. And then the bias in the media is incredible. I mean, you saw Congressman Brat this week. We had 3 separate media outlets, CNN, I think ABC, and NBC, actually propagate false news. I mean, you talk about fake news. This is real, where they actually reported things, tweeted it, retweeted it, put it on their website, reported it, had it picked up by other medias, didn't say anything. That was completely false. It was just a lie. And it took them days to take it down. Days. Unbelievable.
Yeah, and they're not small incidental lies either. They're key pieces of evidence that have to do with all these made-up stories about colluding with Russians, and they changed the dates to make things look like something illegal happened back when the campaign's going on. And then you find out the truth later, and it's like, no, it was totally false. It's after the campaign's all done, and then it's normal to be contacting the rest of the world or whatever. So, I mean, yeah, it's not just little accidental pieces. They're created on purpose for maximum damage, and the press is losing their credibility, and so they deserve that.
Well, you had a major news wire saying that, well, if there's not collusion, the people on the transition team at least violated the Logan Act. That was the act that was passed in 1799, which has never had any impact on anything. It basically says that a private citizen cannot get involved in negotiating foreign policy, right? Well,
right.
If you're on the transition team, Dave Brat, you're not a private citizen. You're paid by the U.S. government. You're a federal employee. The day you go on the transition team, and this is why we have a transition, when you accept that job on the transition team, you're not a private citizen. You're a government employee paid by the federal government working for the incoming administration. So to even say that is a violation of the Logan Act is patently false, right? It's false.
Yeah, well, and it's amazing. The broader issue has to do with, this collusion with Russia during the campaign. That's what the whole special prosecutor, he's limited to that, supposedly. And then that went away, right, because there was no evidence. So now it reemerges, right? They think they got something else. And now we got the dossier evidence against the Democrats. And so now they're shifting turf and they're saying obstruction of justice. That's the new thing they're after. But Dershowitz, the leading Harvard civil libertarian in the country, has said a president can't obstruct, right, in this area of the law. And so you got a Democrat, the chief legal mind in the area. The Democrat, they're just fishing for anything, right? They just need a story desperately. And why is that? Because they own Obamacare. They own anemic economic growth, no job hiring, wages are flat for 30 years, and they're going to get decimated if we get the story out. So they have to make up all these terrible stories about our personalities and link you with all sorts of stuff that's just, incredible, sensational nonsense. And that's all they got right now. And the American people, I hope, are figuring that out, right? They go with the winner. Don't go with this negative hype.
Congressman, the Democrats are so up in arms over this tax cut, not because of it being Armageddon like Nancy Pelosi says or anything else. They're so afraid of it because they know if it passes, in
Yep.
any form like it is now, that the
Yep.
economy is going to take off like a bat out of hell.
Right.
And they are seeing the power. They're seeing the blood in the water. They're seeing a majority coming back. They're seeing the big offices and all the perks they get. And they know if the Republicans pass this tax cut, it's going to slip away and they're not going to gain power. All they care about, they don't care about the economy. They don't care about growth. They don't care about your 401k plan. They don't care if you have a job. All they care about is gaining power. It's really sick. That's why every day on this tax cut, they lie.